State your defense, Ryvan Drosk. Earth has been charged with unauthorized weaponization beneath treaty layers signed under Concord Seal 7. The words rang across the vaulted tribunal like a command carved from old stone. They did not echo, they hung, suspended in the charged air of the Auric spire, as if even acoustics hesitated before crossing Earth's envoy. High Counselor Zarn Valek's mandible creaked inward as he waited. The weight of layered robes, fused with mineral cloth threads, clinked faintly as he shifted. His breath exited in measured streams through slitted gills, a gesture of restrained control, not calm. The hall around him was carved from black-tempered stone mined beneath the polar cradle of Varys Prime. The floor shimmered faintly with embedded laser tracery, recording every word, gesture, and breath since the tribunal's formation. Today it would record something no system was prepared to archive. Drosk entered without ceremony. No honor guard, no aides, just measured steps across a floor that responded oddly to his presence. The pressure-sensitive glass flickered subtly with each footfall, the embedded graviosonic grid mistaking him, for a half-second, for a void event. A pause too small to register for most, but enough to draw narrowed eyes from Corin May, Concord's systems observer. The man was wrapped in a slate-black coat, woven from solar thorn thread, no insignia, no nation seal, no armor. His skin bore no enhancement nodes, and the ceremonial biometric wand passed through him with a flicker of uncertainty, unregistered. Valek leaned forward, eye stalks tightening. I repeat, how do you answer these charges? Drosk stopped 5 paces from Earth's seat, an ancient dust-dark slab left vacant for half a century. It had no backrest, no engraving, no comfort, only a faint inscription, once dismissed as metaphor, now reciting itself into silence. Survival is not conquest, it is what remains. He didn't sit. Instead, Drosk's eyes passed slowly across the council tier, not in challenge, but cataloging. One by one, each representative avoided his stare. Brawl Nexus, scribal observer for the Gussaran systems, tapped the side of his recording slate once, then again, each tap shallower. Oryx Sen, bioweapons envoy from the Caithari, adjusted the filtration lens on his nasal ridge, despite no shift in air quality. Still Drosk said nothing. The tribunal held its breath, or its equivalent, through rows of species incapable of full stillness. Carapaces clicked. Breathers cycled, fabric shifted over exosuits. Finally Drosk spoke, flat, dry, unadorned. Earth submits no defense. A whisper of disbelief ran through the chamber. It wasn't laughter. No one dared. Drav Tenor, military delegate from the Tarsal Core Fleet, let out a short exhale, more animal than diplomatic. Then you admit to the charges. Drosk tilted his head, the motion slow enough to create discomfort. I do not submit a defense, he said, because the accusation is misclassified. Valek's voice narrowed. Our scans registered prohibited energy patterns in Earth's equatorial vault, thermionic clusters, Veil reaction spikes. You will explain. I will clarify, Drosk replied, and reached for nothing. Stillness again, then light. A soft pulse emerged from the inner lining of his coat, stretching a ripple across the chamber's ceiling, triggering a reconfiguration of the embedded display systems. The room darkened, but not into shadow, into blue, the kind of soft spectrum wavelength that predated artificial lighting, deep, lucid, tidal. Above the assembly floor, the first image formed, a terrain cross-section. Earth's southern forests, revealed not root systems, but corridors. Intertwined networks resembling neurograph charts, pulsing faintly. Each flicker corresponded to subtle environmental shifts, temperature flux, pollen drift, soil memory. Corin May stiffened. These are unmapped, Drosk interrupted, not because they were hidden, but because no species present thought to ask how Earth survived itself. The image zoomed. Mycelial networks blinked with internal rhythm. Drosk's voice lowered, gaining weight without volume. Our terrain responds to genetic dissonance. It does not attack, it rejects. When a Concord explorer trod through the sundial veil in 2186, his air filters clogged without apparent cause. His bloodstream spiked with calcium fragments. Your records listed it as allergic trauma. Laser plasma overlays flashed the field's heat map that scouts vitals. The death log signed and sealed. Valek clicked his digits once. That event was ruled non-hostile. You ruled it, Drosk said quietly. Earth didn't. A flicker across the hall's display grid. The forest image faded, replaced by orbital data, spinning fragments, hundreds, no bigger than tool-shed bolts, drifted across the screen, forming a band just above the thermosphere. Valek frowned. Debris? No, said Drosk. Mirror strand projectiles, orbital inertia caps, each one tuned to kinetic vibration at approach thresholds. What you call debris is the trigger field. Silence deepened. Drosk did not move. The patterns match asteroid dispersal. Oryx-Sen offered faintly. They should, Drosk said. That's what you were supposed to believe, until your vessels entered insertion velocity. He reached again, this time to activate a tertiary frame. A sensor reel unspooled across the ceiling. Live footage from a Concorde recon drone. Its activation dated just moments prior. The assembly's surprise was immediate. Someone had called a test probe into Earth's orbit during session. The drone's telemetry blipped, then vanished. No explosion, no energy spike, just absorption. As if space itself had snapped shut around the device. Valek's composure cracked. Who authorized a probe? No one answered. Drosk did not smile. You asked for explanation. Earth offered it. You demanded proof. We allowed it. No threat, no escalation, just information. Riven stepped backward, not in retreat, but to yield the space around Earth's seat. He did not sit. He had never intended to. The charges are invalid, he said. Not because we refuse them, but because your understanding of what constitutes weaponization is flawed. Earth does not arm itself, it endures. The tribunal didn't speak. Zarn Valek inhaled shallowly through his inner spiracles, trying to rebuild formality. Then you're saying these systems, these forests, these orbits, were designed to trigger without authority. They are not authority-sensitive, Drosk said. They are violation-aware. The weight of that phrase settled across every tier, a silence not born of awe, but of recognition. The empty Earth chair glinted under a solitary shaft of refocused light. Drosk turned away, but did not leave. Not yet. From the back of the chamber, Yath Gorik, the only Xeno-diplomatic advisor who had remained silent, spoke, his voice like unpolished glass. Is there more? Drosk's answer was the only moment that could be called cruel. There is only context. Then the chamber's lighting realigned, and the floor began to vibrate with input requests. The council no longer knew how to answer, and Earth's seat remained exactly as it had been, not abandoned, occupied, without ever being touched. Explain this. Zarn Valek's hand sliced downward, activating the council floor's embedded scanner. A column of laser plasma spiraled upward from the tribunal, revealing a rotating helix of time-stamped anomalies, blinking red against the pale blue ambient filter of the chamber. Sensor echoes, atmospheric spikes, orbital distortions, all tagged, all buried in marginal files. Drosk didn't flinch. His fingers barely moved, but the data structure snapped into reformat. Images folded, vectors inverted. The entire sequence of documented Terran instabilities rearranged themselves, not by date, but by recurrence. He didn't look at the display. He didn't need to. This is your archive, he said, flat. I've only adjusted your blind spot. Lurv Dekkan leaned forward on his bench. The record-keeper's triple-jointed fingers hovered over his ledger slate as though unwilling to touch it. His eyes, three, elongated, rimmed in pale orange, twitched in relay. These were flagged as sensor contamination. By whose authority? Drosk asked. Dekkan blinked once. My own. Cross-verified through two analytic relays. Riven's tone remained untouched by condescension. And those relays pulled data from which planetary mesh? Dekkan paused. He tapped a control node beside his ledger. A laser-pin sourcing arc traced back to Earth's outer relay field. The Concorde node. It blinked out mid-projection. Maith hissed through his teeth, a sound barely audible but sharp enough to slice the chamber's artificial quiet. No system anomaly, Valek muttered. Riven gestured once. The chamber floor darkened by degrees. Another laser plasma feed unfolded, this time not from Earth, but Concorde's deep registry. Entries began erasing themselves. Line after line of encoded planetary data blurred, shimmered, and vanished. Each line left behind a mark, not deletion, but withdrawal. You didn't lose access, Drosk explained. You never had it. Brawl Nexus's stylus hovered, uncommitted to any surface. You seeded redactors. No, Drosk replied, eyes now focused. You never stopped to consider that redaction was Earth's default. You assumed absence meant cooperation. The data stream halted. The last visible string blinked once, then it split, and a new file emerged, labeled with a Concord log stamp no one remembered assigning. It read, Eclipsed Frame, 142C//Veil Response Protocol, dormant, until provoked. Deccan's knuckles struck the table as he stood. That's not our format. Correct, Drosk said. It's ours. Tenor's mouth twisted. You embedded Concord's signatures into your own defense files. No, you embedded ours into yours. You just didn't realize the format was mirrored. The tension now moved like heat trapped beneath the chamber floor, bubbling beneath layers of legal protocol and diplomatic hierarchy. Valek's voice dropped to a gravel whisper. This borders on infiltration. No. Drosk turned to face the central dais fully. This is the outcome of neglect. Laser plasma interfaces shifted again. A biosample appeared, one of Earth's oldest archived after a Concord agricultural assessment decades prior. It sat preserved in a cryo frame. As the image sharpened, the roots began to pulse. The chlorophyll levels adjusted. A faint phosphorescent thread pulsed through the leaves. The biosample was reactivating. Lev, inside the chamber's simulation. Deccan recoiled. That's an inert specimen. Sen barked, voice uneven. It should be dormant. It was, Riven answered, until your system queried it. Your own biosim rendered its containment incomplete. The plant shifted again. No explosion, no dramatic transformation, just a microscopic film of transparent spores released into the simulated air. The display isolated them, like dust, but far more aware. Its spores are tuned to synthetic polymers. This display room is composed of 40% organic synthetic weave. What do you think happens next? Valek slammed a palm against the field, severing the projection. It flickered into compression particles, leaving only silence behind. For a full 10 seconds, no one spoke. The heat exhausts in the ceiling modulated downward, not automatically, but in response to internal temperature spikes across the dais tier. Gorik, still silent until now, leaned slightly forward, gaze fixed on the blank floor. You didn't come to explain. I came because you thought explanation would suffice. Riven said, you issued accusations grounded in misunderstanding. I'm merely reducing your assumptions to framework. Another data ring began spinning. This one auto-activated. No one knew who triggered it. It displayed Earth's orbital signatures again. Concord mapping systems had long assumed they were redundant, inactive, random. Now they resolved. Node by node, the debris synchronized into a trajectory lattice, a complex spiral of low-mass objects tethered by magnetic drift harmonics. Concord design protocols had no reference for it. Each ring phase showed a moment when a vessel, long ago passed Earth's orbit and experienced unrecorded anomalies, thrust variation, sensor drift, molecular fatigue. No attacks, Drosk said, just interruptions. Tenor growled, this is all circumstantial. Drosk inclined his head, then verify it. Valek's hand moved, hesitated over the drone command slate. He looked to Helv track. Deploy another scout, high orbit. Helv didn't respond. Helv, the security envoy, stood frozen, eyes wide, not in shock, but recognition. His internal display, visible only to his retina, had just darkened. I can't access launch protocols. Excuse me, my command relay routes through. Helv stopped. A satellite tagged neutral beacon 11. Sidmay stepped forward, voice laced with disbelief. That's Terran coded. No, Drosk corrected. It was registered through a neutral channel. You assigned it as an administrative repeater to stabilize fringe comms. Are you suggesting? Maith started. I'm not suggesting, Drosk said. I'm clarifying. Another display lit. An old emergency relay chain. Dozens of worlds routed through Earth-linked beacons. A redundancy no one ever reviewed after installation. Now all silent. Not disabled. Not deleted. Just idle. A delegate in the rear dropped a communications slate. It struck the floor with a brittle note, and didn't shatter, but the sound echoed too loudly. Zarn Valek breathed shallowly now, each inhale more calculated than the last. This is not a declaration of war, he said. No, Drosk agreed. It's a reminder you already started one without knowing the terms. Silence clawed through the air. Deccan's hand trembled against his console. The blinking indicators stopped. The biosample container, still visible in dormant freeze, pulsed once more, not threatening, just present. We didn't see it, he whispered. Drosk stepped back from the dais. You never looked. He said nothing else, but something in the ceiling's lighting faltered. No flicker, no flare, just a shift in color, so faint only the most attuned species noticed. It wasn't Terran tech doing it. It was the chamber itself, adjusting instinctively, as if trying to correct for something it could not identify. And beneath it all, Earth's seat remained untouched, as though it had always known. Begin the simulation, Drosk said. The graviosonic floor obeyed before anyone could debate the command. The tribunal's light arrays dimmed, not into darkness, but into an amber-gold shadow reminiscent of dying sunlight filtered through ancient foliage. The air thickened, not chemically, but optically, fine particles aligned with invisible resonance nodes, distorting perception without touch. No one moved. The laser plasma field uncoiled like a waking serpent, layering multi-depth strata across the chamber's floor and ceiling. Time rewound. The tribunal chamber reshaped itself into another world entirely. Earth, 1.4 billion years pre-Concord. Molten basalt flowed in slow waves across the floor projection, licking against ridged granite continents still cooling from planetary birth. Lightning arced downward, not from clouds but from atmospheric friction itself. Oceans boiled upward into the air, releasing hydrogen blooms that shimmered like veins of fire. Geological kill zones, Riven narrated, no longer speaking, but guiding, formed not through intent, but permanence. Continents fought one another through plate convulsion. What you see is not war. It's rehearsal. Brawl Nexus leaned forward unconsciously, his eyes following the split tectonic plates as they drove into each other, creating trenches deep enough to drown mountains. Each collision sent shockwaves racing through the tribunal's simulated floor, tremors calibrated to mimic the sensation, not just the sight. A soft grinding followed, like the edge of bone dragged across stone. The image shifted. Earth, 430 million years pre-Concord. The lava fields had vanished. Now came green. Forests towered beyond the ceiling's borders, roots thick as bulkhead cables, leaves the size of sails. The entire projection breathed. Photosynthetic drift shimmered in the air, and with it came movement. Predators emerged, not as monsters, but inevitabilities. Six-legged figures moved with patient certainty. Their eyes weren't savage. They were calculating. They tracked in silence, adjusted for wind angles, stalked with method. These were not mindless, Drosk murmured. They memorized blood types by scent drift. They predicted illness. They tracked respiration from underfoot vibrations. They did not chase. They curated. Tenor shifted in his seat, fingers tightening along the inner bracing of his armor. That's speculation. Incorrect, Drosk said. This data comes from fossilized nervous systems preserved beneath cryo-ash fallout. Behavior encoded in marrow density. Evolution didn't proceed. It focused. The floor rotated again. Earth, 6.1 million years pre-Concord. The predator forms had changed. Limbs grew more articulate. Movement became quieter, slower, smarter. A panther-shaped silhouette moved through digital undergrowth, pausing as a genetic cousin passed through the frame. It didn't attack. It studied. The cry of an extinct hunter echoed through the room, a low vibration calibrated to thread beneath conscious hearing, latching into bone resonance. The council stiffened. Some looked upward, others lowered their heads. Even the air felt thinner. Riven spoke again, this time slower. Earth selected aggression not as an exception, but as a rule. Intelligence was not a gift. It was an environmental reaction. Valek turned his head without speaking, jaw clenching tighter. A slight twitch moved across the frill of Gorik's neck. The projection surged forward. Earth, post-ice collapse 14,000 years pre-Concord. Human ancestors stepped into view, primitive clothing, tools shaped by glacial erosion, but the key wasn't their technology. It was the terrain. The projection showed their path through a valley lined with soft-growing moss. Every footstep triggered a reaction, Nearby flora released counterpollen. Each chemical had a target: blood dilution, sleep induction, neural dampening. The humans adapted. They changed routes, mapped spores, categorized silent signals in soil by foot feel. Auric Sen finally spoke. "You're saying your people didn't survive their world, they reverse-engineered it." Drosk turned his gaze toward him. "No, we didn't alter it. We made ourselves legible to it." A final image surged through the floor. Earth, modern era. The tribunal chamber was now surrounded by glistening forest again, except this time, overlays showed real-time Earth monitoring data. Fungal networks pulsed beneath every tree. Root systems expanded and contracted like vascular systems. A heat bloom ignited across the canopy when a simulated alien lifeform crossed an invisible boundary. Drosk gestured once, and the forest froze mid-pulse. "Every branch in that forest has already recorded your biosignature," he said. "The trees don't attack. They remember, the same way our ancestors taught them to, by dying in their shadows." From the side of the council tier, Lurv Dekan finally whispered, "You built your survival into the soil." "No," Drosk replied. "We lost too many to try that. The soil built us instead." He stepped once across the projected valley. The system reacted, shifting wind vectors across his projection, archiving his every molecule. "We stopped thinking of Earth as terrain," he said. "We began thinking of it as archive, as calculus, as partner." The forest receded. In its place, the chamber displayed a fossilized map, real, scanned from a limestone chamber buried beneath Earth's polar ridge. It showed skeletons of predators frozen mid-attack, jaws locked onto prey that had already died. No survivors, only combat, terminated by terrain, not by victor. The tribunal's floor cooled visibly. The air carried a scent not of death, but minerality, cold dirt and layered bone, not decay. Endurance. Tenor exhaled through his nostrils, clearing what emotion still simmered behind his guarded expression. "You call this defense?" Drosk looked at the bones, then at the council. "I call it context." Valek gestured, impatient. "And what is the conclusion?" Drosk's reply was measured. "That Earth does not build weapons." A pause. "It learns how to wait." For a long time, no one answered. Then, without another motion, Drosk returned to stillness. The graviosonic floor phased back into neutral. The fossil map dimmed, light returned, and under every seat, the air filters engaged, silently scrubbing spores from a simulation that was never supposed to carry data that far. But Earth never asked for permission. It only asked to be misunderstood. "Launch the scout," barked Zarn Valek as the assembly's tension crested into brittle anticipation. Immediately, a Concord Commission drone ascended from a remote relay hub deep within the orbital command console, its sleek form cutting through the shimmering data streams displayed on laser plasma screens. The device glided into Earth's designated orbit, its trajectory charted by automated protocols once deemed routine. Yet as it pierced the starfield above, an invisible countermeasure surged from Earth's kinetic defense grid. In that exact moment, high-definition telemetry lights on the heads-up displays violently spiked, recording an anomaly that defied expectation. A rapidly expanding field of high-velocity microfragments, an engineered net of kinetic strands materialized around the drone, as if summoned by an unseen hand. The probe's outer casing disintegrated in a cascade of particulate energy, scattering in swirling motes that danced briefly under the chamber's ambient illumination. A static-laced audio burst, sharp and jarring, erupted from the display's speakers, punctuating the sudden silence that followed. "Report," Zarn demanded, his tone cracking like brittle ice under pressure. Corin Maith, the assembly's technical analyst, fumbled with his data interface. His normally confident posture dissolved into one of sheer disbelief as he attempted to model the unexpected interference. "This isn't recorded in any forecast. Our simulations fail to account for kinetic strand synchronization," he stuttered, eyes wide with unprocessed data. Ryvan Drosk maintained his stoic composure. His gaze, cool and unwavering, met the anxious stares around him. "Observation confirms what has been long neglected in your records," he stated in a measured tone that conveyed neither triumph nor apology. His voice, quiet and unwavering, carried the weight of undisputed fact. "Earth's defense strategy transcends conventional weaponry. This is a demonstration of environmental encryption, a countermeasure that neutralizes intrusions by converting orbital debris into a reactive barrier. A low murmur stirred among the delegates. Auric Sen, whose skeptical nature often masked deeper apprehension, leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he absorbed the unfolding proof. Your explanation implies that we observed a defense mechanism not engineered for aggression, but for deterrence, he ventured, his voice laced with an uneasy mixture of astonishment and disdain. A sudden shift in the sensory fabric of the room recalled earlier moments of simulation. The chamber's engineered acoustics and climate control seemed to react. Subtle changes in temperature brushed across exposed skin, and the filtered air carried an undercurrent of crisp mineralized coolness, reminiscent of ancient untouched stone. Meanwhile, the drone feed, once a flowing record of technological routine, had disintegrated into a cascade of erratic images, each frame capturing a transient burst of chaos. Brawl Nexus scribbled furiously on his slate, every stroke a desperate attempt to document the rapid collapse of familiar order. Our emergency protocols registered nothing that could account for such instantaneous nullification. It is as if the drone never existed within the physical realm, he murmured, almost to himself, his tone reflecting the confusion that now permeated the chamber. Drosk's eyes swept the assembly, gauging reactions with the clinical detachment of one who has witnessed nature's harsh calculus. I do not demand ignorance, he said softly, but a willingness to examine the overlooked. Your instruments have always been manipulated by Earth's countercoding. The drone's termination was not an attack, it was a retrieval, a reclamation of data you willingly discarded. Corin Maith's hands trembled as he attempted to recalibrate his interface. Every algorithm he'd trusted now spiraled into uncertainty, producing error logs that flashed unpredictably. Our computational frameworks are now inadequate, he admitted, voice strained as he wrestled with cascading numerical failures that provided neither insight nor comfort. The chamber's lighting responded by shifting into a cooler hue, highlighting every contour of the panel interfaces and reflecting off the polished surfaces of the assembly's ancient stone. A subtle vibration pulsed beneath the floor, a reminder that Earth's kinetic matrix was no static artifice, but a dynamic system, one that continuously adjusted its defensive posture. The sensory feedback, a blend of visual depth and tactile resonance, enveloped every delegate, forcing even the most stoic to confront the palpable disruption in their established order. Without a trace of emotive intonation, Drosk continued, observe the fragment bloom on the display. These aren't errant particles. They are the manifestations of an intentional network designed to intercept any entity daring to penetrate Earth's outer buffer zone. His voice was neither celebratory nor threatening. It was an exposition of immutable truth, delivered with the cold clarity of mathematical deduction. A brief moment of uneasy silence followed, punctuated solely by the sporadic flicker of the laser plasma displays and the muted echo of distant recalibrations from the security consoles. Drave Tenor, ever the military hardliner, finally leaned in, his tone understated yet laced with urgency. We must determine if this mechanism is replicable. The efficacy demonstrated here could redefine our tactical doctrines. Drosk's response was a slight tilt of his head, a motion that carried the weight of a verdict. Replication is unnecessary when deterrence functions continuously. Earth does not seek to escalate, it adapts. In every stray fragment, there is a message. Our planetary defense is not an afterthought, it is an inherent design. His words painted a picture not only of active countermeasures, but also of a passive system integrated so deeply into Earth's fabric that it operated invisibly, like an immune response calibrated to the collective threat. The auditory output from the drone feed, now reduced to intermittent static, served as a grim counterpoint to the assembly's creeping disbelief. Its chaotic bursts, far from offering a rhythm of resistance, underscored the utter nullification of an intruder that had dared to challenge Earth's sovereignty. The erratic static coalesced with the assembly's rising murmurs, an acoustic representation of doubts collapsing into shared astonishment, yet not all delegates reacted with overt alarm. Some, such as Lurv Dekan, appeared frozen in cognitive disarray, their computed expressions betraying a mix of regret and resignation. Their recorded data, once so confidently curated, now lay in tatters before an inexorable counterforce. The physicality of Earth's hidden arsenal, manifesting in kinetic shards and transient spectral echoes, converted the tribunal's collective skepticism into a reluctant acknowledgement of a paradigm shift. As the display feed whirled into a final sequence, an absorption that left a residual imprint of kinetic bloom followed by a cessation of visual data. Drosk's stance remained unaltered, his gaze, locked on every flickering image and every disintegrated signal, spoke volumes even in silence. "Our defense operates beyond the realm of your understood warfare," he stated, voice firm yet unembellished. "It is a quiet recalibration of nature itself, an immutable safeguard that preempts aggression." The very air in the chamber seemed to shudder, as each delegate processed the incontrovertible evidence of an Earth that could disassemble an intruder with a mechanism as elegant as it was devastating. Every sensory input, glowing display fragments, the cool charge in the atmosphere, and the erratic pulses of disrupted data, converged into a testimony of Earth's long-prepared vigilance. Valek's features tightened into an expression that registered not only disbelief but a reluctant respect tinted with growing apprehension. "We have miscalculated the parameters of your world's defenses," he murmured, words thick with the gravity of an irreversible conclusion. Drosk neither smiled nor nodded. Instead, he allowed the technical failure of the drone and the ensuing cascade of fragmented signals to stand as irrefutable demonstration. There was no need for further debate. The drone feed, now silenced except for sporadic bursts of interference, remained as a chilling relic of the encounter, a final unspoken bullet embedded within the Assembly's collective memory. In that moment, the kinetic network's efficacy was undeniable. It had not merely intercepted a hostile probe, it had obliterated any illusion that Earth was passive. Every delegate, every technician, and every voice in the chamber now faced the harsh truth that their defenses were obsolete against an enemy whose arsenals were woven into the very fabric of its world. As the last echoes of static dissipated, a new kind of silence took hold, one layered with resignation and the bleak realization that the cosmic order had shifted irreversibly. No new threats emerged. No subsequent signals attempted a counterattack. Only the quiet roar of data, recalibrating and reabsorbing into Earth's insidious design, resonated in the minds of those present. Thus, without further commentary, Revan Drosk allowed the ensuing moment to settle, a moment wherein the Assembly's remaining strength crumbled under the cumulative weight of evidence, each fragment of debased data, a testament to a planetary defense that had triumphed in the most unexpected manner. The chamber, now bathed in the chill blue of recalibrated displays, bore silent witness to the first external verification that Earth's hidden countermeasures worked flawlessly, leaving the galactic powers to reckon with a new reality. The quiet knife in orbit had already struck, and nothing would ever be the same again. "Something's wrong with the relay spine. Our orbital layer isn't responding," Helvtrack snapped, his fingers already mid-command as static-laced coordinates crawled across the heads-up display in front of him. Node 11's bleeding signal into Terran frequency markers. "It's not bouncing, it's rerouting. No relay should default to Terran backbone." Valek barked, but the frustration in his voice was already eclipsed by something colder. The creeping realization that his authority no longer extended beyond the room's ancient walls. Laser plasma screens across the chamber flickered to life without request, cascading through overlapping sectors, planetary dashboards, colony biosphere alerts, trade route, contamination flags, and encrypted supply chain overlays. Each bled red across their margins. Concord Logistics, long automated, deeply trusted, were failing, not explosively, but systematically. The failures came quietly, with clinical detachment. A soft chime announced new incoming data. Sector 14 agricultural lattice purge triggered. Seed-grade genome ID. Terran spliced. Sterility index exceeding 94%. Oryx Sen rose to protest, but his voice didn't carry. Mid-breath, his chest tightened. He took a step backward and missed the floor. Hands splayed, he clutched the edge of his panel, failed to grip, and dropped. Not violently, just disconnected. As if some internal function had quietly let go. Delegates froze. Drosk did not move. He didn't so much as glance down. Gorik's words were the first to break the hush. "Is that one of ours reacting to Earthfield interference?" Koran Meth reviewed the biofeed, already auto-flagged by Earth-linked sensors. Neurospore trace, latency scan shows a 17-year dormancy, reactivated by regional nutrient spike. He looked up, jaw slack. The spores were embedded in trade-fused atmosphere when we surveyed Sector 9, during Earth's silent decade. "It's not a counterattack," murmured Lurv Dekan. "It's an audit." Maith leaned toward him. "What did you say?" An audit. We catalogued Earth without permission. They let us. Another alert blinked. Chiron outpost. Comms degraded. Visual obstruction via biolum particle bloom. Atmospheric filtration compromised. Terrestrial fragment ID confirmed. The display panned to show cloud-like strands weaving through a moon-based dome. No explosion, no breach, just a shimmer. Something alive, intentional, beautiful, and completely incompatible with local biology. What is that? Helv demanded. Drosk answered as if reading from a quiet, ancient text. Spore-light web, native to Earth's southern oceans, photosensitive in the presence of synthetic carbonates. Why is it in orbit? It isn't, Riven replied. It's in transit, delivered with your own imports. Another heads-up feed opened. Velkari Central Processing, fail-safe loop engagement triggered. Terran memory seeds breached containment. Root cascade detected across synthetics grid. Maith's hands shook visibly now. How far do the root memories go? Drosk's voice was not loud, but it was absolute. Every system that copied Terran software architecture, after year 812, has latent tree index tagging. You didn't replicate our code, you propagated our growth. Valek pounded the console edge with one clawed hand. Why didn't our filtration systems block the intrusion? They weren't designed to, Drosk said. You treated Earth like a supplier. You never considered we were seeding compatibility. A map of the Concord Alliance glowed into full sphere. Fault lines lit up, not geological, but data routes. Red arcs pulsed slowly, connecting star systems like capillaries hemorrhaging inward. Track stared at the blinking strands. Those are our food chains. No, said Drosk. They're Earth's fallback. Another chime. Sector 19, cryo-reserve degradation initiated. Vault atmospheres show thermal instability. Root signature, Terran stamped packaging foam. Silence stretched across the assembly again, but now it vibrated. An invisible static charged with something unspoken. Drosk's expression never shifted. We offered trade, he said, not trust. Oryx Sen stirred on the floor, groaning faintly. Brawl Nexus crouched beside him, checking pulse and ocular dilation. He's breathing, he muttered, but his neurons are firing inconsistently. He'll recover, Drosk said. The spores aren't lethal. They're educational. Maith choked on a bitter breath. Educational. They teach the body what intrusion feels like. The red fault lines began to pulse faster, feeding into a secondary layer, this one forming a grid of living currents. Deccan's data slate froze mid-record. He tapped the refresh node, once, then twice. The interface collapsed into black. My records just folded in on themselves. They were written on a system that borrowed from Terran's sandbond architecture. Drosk replied, your platform isn't being erased, it's being returned. Heads turned to the central globe, now covered in breathing signal maps, color-shifting threads that showed not violence, but occupancy. Tenor stood abruptly. How long have these fields been active? They've never been inactive, Riven answered. Valek's breath became audible, a short rhythm behind tight teeth. Why didn't you warn us? We did, Drosk said, nodding toward the archive wall. You called them corrupt files. We called them markers. One final message blinked into view. Sector 32, Concord Com Grid, routed to fallback echo. Core translator cycle intercepted. No outgoing messages permitted until filtration complete. Contact terminated. No explosions, no ships, just withdrawal. As the displays faded into low blue and the breathing maps receded, the assembly chamber filled with something far heavier than defeat. A quiet certainty, a shifting of the axis. Earth never waited to retaliate, Helv muttered. You just built the retaliation for them. Drosk turned at last, walking back to Earth's vacant seat. He did not occupy it. He stood beside it, waiting, not for permission, only for comprehension. Engage Omega Lane Strike. Full grid activation. Now. Fleet Marshal Corps Valen's voice didn't rise. It fractured. His order cut across the tribunal with a shiver, but the war table beneath his command chair refused to respond. The satellite control node blinked once in acknowledgement, then returned to standby. No visual, no audio cue, just idle, waiting. No confirmation on launch, murmured one of the aides to his left, gaze locked on the heads-up interface. It accepted the command, but nothing fired. Override it, Valen said flatly. Another attempt, another null input. The cursor traced back into the same looping error, this time timestamped with a fallback date, +47.0263. Initial signal registered. Earth relay active. Core and Maith stepped toward the panel, adjusting the calibration manually. The console pulsed once, then flashed an error string built from Concord's own tactical glyphs. Pathing not authorized. Foreign vector lock. He froze. It's not just blocked, it's pre-owned. Valek turned, his mouth tense. Define that. They routed your Omega Strike system through Earth's dormant satellite grid, and Earth's grid isn't dormant anymore. Across the main wall, the Concord war map dissolved sector by sector. It didn't flicker, it deactivated. Heat maps turned cold. Signal overlays dulled to gray. Fleet positions vanished, one theater at a time, like stars submerged beneath rising ink. We've lost region command, said the Velnari delegate, struggling to make his voice matter. 14 fleets just went black. Not destroyed, Maith whispered. Unplugged. Heads turned toward Drosk. He stood with hands clasped calmly at his waist. The chamber's displays cast slow blue highlights across his face. His expression had not changed in over an hour. You planned for this, Valen accused. Voice tight, not loud. This wasn't response. This was always installed. Incorrect, Drosk replied evenly. This wasn't installed. It was adopted. Your protocols assimilated Earth's infrastructure when you sought speed over sovereignty. We simply refrained from interfering until your strike order activated legacy code. A fresh stream of command attempts appeared on the center table. Each was rerouted through the same three-letter root address. ER. Lurv Deccan stepped back from the war table. These nodes predate the Concord by 47 years, Drosk confirmed. Your founding systems were augmented by then-abandoned Terran archives. Nothing you use was ever clean. Heads-up projections clustered at the corners of the chamber, lines of code folding into themselves, unreachable command trees cascading into recursive denial. The room's atmosphere tightened without mechanical interference. No threat issued, just failure echoing across every tier. Then Drosk moved. For the first time since he entered, he crossed the floor. The graviosonic slab responded differently beneath his steps. Each pace triggered subtle harmonic glows, like chords struck on a stringed instrument, made from stone and time. When he reached the central control pedestal, he didn't raise his voice. Permission to access record frame Silix 13. No frame by that designation, began a junior record technician, but the console answered before he finished. A black tile descended silently from the ceiling. It was unmarked, smooth, carved from volcanic glass fused with a core unknown to most of the species present. A single glyph pulsed on its surface, Terran origin, predating Concord's charter by 2 generations. Drosk placed one palm against it. The air inside the spire changed. Not warmer, not colder. Still, the screen lit, not with warning, but memory. A voice emerged, male, human, clipped Terran cadence. If you're hearing this, you failed the audit. The chamber didn't move. Earth offered non-intervention. You assumed silence meant vacancy. You used our systems. You routed your treaties through our wires. We didn't stop you, but we did watch. The voice belonged to someone long buried, an ancestor not of violence, but of caution. This isn't a message of retaliation. This is a conclusion. Helvtrack tried one last override command. The screen denied it preemptively, not with force, but with dismissal. You never considered we were listening. You forgot the wires had roots. Now you remember. The satellite voice clip ended. The display flickered. The only name glowing on the assembly's map grid now was Earth. Every other sector had gone dark. No sounds remained. No blinking lights. Just one planetary designation glowing alone. Fixed, unmoving, untouchable. Zarn Volek dropped his gaze to the command tablet embedded in his seat. He touched the emergency beacon, a command no one had ever used in history. The interface blinked once, then returned an ancient log. Signal received. Action previously concluded. Volek leaned forward, the weight of defeat coiling around his spine. There is nothing left to command, he said. Revan Drosk stepped away from the core panel and returned to his original place near Earth's empty seat. He didn't look satisfied. He didn't look cruel. He looked like someone watching the final click of a countdown long forgotten. No strike, no countermeasure, no appeal, he said. Only your systems concluding themselves. One final message surfaced on the primary table. Not from Earth, not from any known server. Just a single sentence: collapse protocol concluded. The chamber sat still. No weapons, no deaths, only realization. Earth had never needed to strike. It had simply waited. Now the assembly understood, and there was nothing left to do. Track him. Valen didn't shout. The order left his mouth like static trying to impersonate authority. One word per breath. Every eye turned to the security console. Track's hands moved, quick, efficient, over the control array, isolating biosignature beacons, pulling the heat trace of Riven Drosk across the tribunal's layered command field. For a moment there he was. Coordinates pinned. Biotag confirmed. Then the trace folded, not vanished, inverted. The display blinked amber, then washed gray. A warning etched itself onto the feed's perimeter. Routing suspended. Node already resolved. Extraction in progress. Valig's fingers curled into the stone rail beside his chair, not in anger, but in recognition. He's not escaping, he muttered. He was never present the way we believed. Corin Maith leaned over the console, scrolling the anomaly log. He's nested inside a cold shell we thought was our own beacon. Brawl Nexus whispered, half in fear, half in understanding. He used our own security lattice. No, said Gorick, barely audible, as if afraid speaking louder would trigger something dormant. He designed it. We only licensed the shell. The chamber lights dimmed in slow graduation. Not a failure, a recalibration. Each photo panel adapted to shifting environmental cues no one had noticed until now. Drosk's path glowed in brief, reflected through residual particle drift. No shimmer, no distortion. Just absence remembered by pressure sensors. Track issued a countersweep, redirecting all internal drones to pursuit mode. Priority class override. He tapped execute. Nothing moved. The chamber's ceiling, laced with auto-response flight decks, remained sealed. No movement. Valik asked. Track's throat tightened. They're waiting for launch windows. Launch to where? Nowhere. Because there's nothing left to chase. Another heads-up display flared. Transmission dead zone initiated. It wasn't a jam. It was a ripple, like heatless current passing over bone. In the silence, an automated mic embedded in the wall feed caught a final statement, just seconds before Drosk exited the chamber's scanner range. His voice, unchanged, low but unmistakable. You misread Earth's quiet. No dramatics, no punctuation. Just an endnote on a report they hadn't realized they were part of. From the assembly tower's external walls, sensors picked up a vessel detaching, slow, deliberate, as if unfolding from the station's own scaffolding, not cloaked, not hidden, nested. For 37 years, it had rested beneath their own signal jamming array, misregistered as a heat dispersal unit. Deccan whispered, it was inside our blind zone. Maith exhaled sharp, not hidden, normalized, like the seed patterns, like the memory loops. The vessel did not emit a wake. Its atmospheric distortion was designed to mimic station drift. No burst, no flare, just a gentle release, and then nothing. I want comms open, said Valik. Track nodded. They won't respond. Do it anyway. The signal bounced, then returned. Dead relay, not an error. Enclosure. Every effort to trace its signature led not outward, but inward, looped through layers of ghost data, buried beneath Concord firmware. Files tagged under Legacy Archive, ERCND04, not labeled Terran, just baseline. The floor under Earth's seat brightened. Not an alert, illumination from below, like a memory remembered by the stone itself. The chair, never used, cast a sharp vertical shadow across the tribunal tiles. Something ancient about its geometry made it feel heavier than the surrounding infrastructure, as though the seat didn't rest on the floor, it pinned it. No landing gear from the ship, Maith muttered. Because it never landed, Gorick replied. It grew from where you weren't looking. The transport's visual finally registered on a perimeter feed. It shimmered once, then joined the black between stars. The engines left no trail. There was no vector, only subtraction. The extraction had not been tactical. It had been designed. No alarms sounded. No threat posture triggered. Because every alert protocol required contrast. Something foreign, Drosk had never been foreign. He had simply been interfaced. Valek sat down, not because he wanted to, but because standing now meant pretending action still mattered. He watched the seat glow, no warmth, no color shift, just the reality that Earth's representative had entered, dismantled, departed, without breaching a single Concord clause. He didn't flee, Tenor finally said. No, Gorik answered. He finished. Silence coalesced into density, the kind that didn't invite response, only acknowledgement. At the rear of the chamber, a sub-panel blinked. Drosk had left a single file, unencrypted. Track played it. It was a broadcast loop, low grade, compressed beyond diplomatic standards. Visual, a Terran school, two boys building something with micro-glass arrays, splicing filament like it was clay. No narration, just hands, small ones, assembling tools older than the assembly chamber's stone. In the corner of the frame, Earth rotated, quiet, blue, unarmed, unafraid. The file ended. The display shut down. The seat stopped glowing, and Earth once again said nothing, because it no longer needed to. Lock the Earth protocols. Bral Nexus didn't ask. He issued the instruction with a voice that no longer sought debate. His data slate sat untouched before him, the edges charred not from fire, but from trace coding that rewrote itself into redundancy. Across the Concord archives, the Earth simulation drills began folding inward, algorithmic petals closing one final time, not erased, not forgotten, just placed beyond reach. On screen, a transmission node in the Arvik sector blinked once, then fell silent. No flare, no alarm, just expiration. Deactivation complete. Origin, ERC'd. In the silence that followed Riven Drosk's disappearance, the Galactic Assembly Hall became less a room and more a memorial. Seats remained unoccupied, not out of disrespect, but out of a collective refusal to pretend authority still applied. Earth's chair, still empty, now glowed beneath the floor like an artifact sanctified by omission. No one touched it, no one assigned it, no one dared sweep the floor beneath it. The maintenance drones deactivated themselves upon nearing its perimeter. Zarn Valek placed his resignation on the tribunal's central plinth. No title, no salutation, no speech, just a blank scroll burned with one phrase stamped by hand: survival is not a campaign. Then he walked the length of the spire alone, and did not return. Across 37 systems, Earth-originated nodes stirred, not to awaken, but to close their final gates. Trade latches failed, not violently, but politely. BioWare embedded in colony greenhouses initiated seed dormancy without broadcasting motive. Cryogenic libraries copied Terran immune drift markers into sub-zero pulse archives, then erased the original instructions. Earth didn't pull out, it simply finished what it started. No retaliation ever followed, only subtraction. Yath Gorik watched the sector feed cascade across the Assembly's largest heads-up display, planetary overlays going dark in synchrony, as though someone was closing eyelids on a sleeping empire. He didn't speak for the first 20 minutes. When he did, it was to no one. They never answered us because we weren't asking questions, we were filling silence with noise. On Helvtrack's interface, a treaty draft flickered, new terms for Terran neutrality. No one had authorized it, no one had reviewed it. The system generated it based on policy protocols that hadn't been touched in decades. It hovered on screen, unsigned. No delegate moved to transmit. What would we even send it through? Track said quietly. Every comm relay routes back through Earth's orbital spine. No one responded. In the hall below, scroll vaults sealed themselves. One casing, a ceremonial container, once meant to hold future diplomatic agreements, now bore a black tag, Earth Archive restricted by System Memory Retention Order, not locked, remembered. Tenor stood before the Concord's star table one final time. The stars no longer pulsed, the war grid no longer shimmered, the sector overlays were black and flat. He touched one point, Earth, and let his finger linger. Nothing we do will be interpreted as strength now, he said, not bitter, just done. Every gesture looks like apology. Every silence looks like retreat. What's the difference now? Maith asked from behind him. No difference, Tenor answered, only delay. Back in the simulation archive, Bral Nexus hovered his stylus over the last running Terran drill. He didn't deactivate it. He didn't overwrite it. He watched. The simulation played on loop, A schoolyard, a relay, a glimmer of dust sliding down glass, human hands building tools with no manual, no military, just intuition. The loop paused on a frame of a human child, holding a fractured lens to the sun. The light bent, not outward, but into a focused line aimed straight down. We never tried to understand the angle. He closed the simulation. Across the central council table, a single glyph blinked to life. Audit completed. There was no record of who sent it, no path trace, no approval cue. No one dared remove it. It simply stayed, like the empty chair, like the memory of a planet that said nothing but restructured everything. Later that season, an alliance of 6 bordering species attempted to draft a collective armistice with Earth. The proposal stalled before the ink set, not out of opposition, but from collective refusal to transmit. No one wanted to be the first voice, because Earth's last had never been answered. We require no sanction, Drosk had said. We designed for betrayal. That line appeared in 43 policy logs, none authorized. It had been transcribed into policy fragments, drifted into sublanguage, etched into drone self-tests. When analysts tried to remove it, systems stalled. The removal logs were reabsorbed. Eventually, they stopped trying. A month later, a command node near the Vask line tried to launch a secondary strike simulation, purely training, strictly closed circuit. The moment it loaded Earth as an opposing factor, the system rebooted itself and erased the scenario. Beneath the Academy spire's outer arch, no flag had been raised for Earth since the incident, but no replacement banner had ever been mounted. Every time an aide tried to hang one, the mounting brace emitted a low-frequency tone, not damaging, just cold. Eventually, they stopped trying that too. What remained was not fear. It was not reverence. It was compliance without instruction. Because Earth had not declared anything, it had revealed everything, without war, without fleets, without even speaking. And the galaxy, once so certain it governed its own perimeter, now lived within an unseen perimeter, drawn long ago, one handshake, one relay, one seed at a time. There would be no retaliation, no celebration, just memory encoded into the frameworks of every system Earth had once touched. The audit wasn't retaliation, it was inheritance, a final unseen clause in every forgotten contract. Survival is ours, not because we shouted, but because we listened harder than you ever imagined, and the galaxy would never forget again.